I still remember that moment as if it happened yesterday. The hotel lobby was glowing with chandeliers, families checking in, children laughing, luggage wheels clattering across the marble floor. My hands shook as I held my purse tight, trying to keep my excitement under control. This trip was supposed to be special. A chance for us to bond again. Mom, just stand to the side, okay? We'll handle the check-in, my son whispered sharply, waving me off like I was some kind of nuisance. I smiled faintly. I can do it, sweetheart. Don't worry. But he didn't even hear me. His wife, my daughter-in-law, was already pushing the passports across the counter, her voice loud and rushed. 2 family suites booked under Johnson. Yes, we'll need the pool access and the car service. The young receptionist tapped on the keyboard. Yes, ma'am. Everything is prepaid. I lowered my eyes, biting back a smile. Prepaid? Of course it was. By me. But nobody here needed to know that, not yet. My granddaughter tugged my arm. Grandma, can we go to the pool first? Her sweet little voice melted me. Of course, darling. As soon as your parents are ready. Her mother rolled her eyes. Pool later. We're going shopping first. The kids need clothes. And Mom, she turned toward me with a plastic smile. Try not to get lost, okay? I nodded, holding my purse tighter. My fingers brushed against the hotel receipts folded inside. Proof that this entire trip existed because of me. But I had promised myself I wouldn't say a word. I wanted to see their true faces first. We rode the elevator in silence. My son scrolled on his phone. My daughter-in-law whispered something into her sister's ear and they both laughed. I tried to catch my son's eye, but he never looked up. Inside the suite, the kids ran straight to the balcony, squealing at the view of the ocean. It's amazing, they shouted. Yes, I whispered to myself, it is. But no one heard me. That evening we gathered in the lobby again. My daughter-in-law checked her watch impatiently. We've got dinner reservations at the rooftop restaurant. Exclusive seating. Very expensive. She looked straight at me and added, it might be too fancy for you, Mom. Why don't you rest tonight? My heart stopped. Rest? But I thought we were all going together. She pressed her lips. You'll be more comfortable here. Trust me. I turned to my son, desperate for him to contradict her. Honey, I'd like to come. I don't mind dressing up. But he avoided my gaze. Maybe it's best if Mom stays just for tonight. She's tired from the flight. I wasn't tired. I wasn't sick. I wasn't confused. I was invisible. So I forced a smile. All right. If that's what you think. The children waved as they hurried out the doors, chattering about dessert and fireworks. And then just like that I was left alone in the lobby. I sat there for a long time, the sound of the fountain echoing in the empty space. Couples walked past holding hands. Families laughed over ice cream. Me. I was just an old woman, abandoned by the very people I had given everything for. I whispered to myself, they don't even know. They don't know I paid for every single bite they're about to eat. The thought burned inside me. Later, back in my room, I stared at the receipts again. Room charges. Spa passes. Tour packages. Every detail carefully arranged. Every bill quietly settled by me. I had wanted to give them a gift. A memory to cherish. But instead I had been shoved aside like a burden. I pressed my hand against my chest. Why did I ever think they'd change? The hotel lights glittered outside my window. Somewhere out there my son and his wife were clinking glasses, smiling, enjoying the life I had handed them. Me. I sat in the dark, whispering into the silence. They ditched me at the hotel, unaware I'd paid for it all. But that night I made my move. The next morning I woke up early, long before the others. Old habits never leave you. I still rise with the sun. I quietly dressed and went down to the breakfast hall, hoping maybe today would feel different. The tables were filled with families laughing, clinking cups of coffee, children running between chairs. I sat alone, pouring myself tea. I told myself they'll join me soon. We'll eat together. It'll be fine. But when they arrived, I realized I had been fooling myself. My son walked past my table without even noticing me. His wife and her sister followed, chatting loudly, their voices full of excitement. Which boutique should we visit first? My daughter-in-law asked. The designer one near the plaza, her sister replied. I heard they're having a sale. They sat 3 tables away, pulling chairs together. I watched as they ordered coffee and croissants, their laughter echoing across the room. Finally I stood and walked over. "Good morning," I said softly, smiling at the children. "Did you sleep well?" My grandson barely looked up from his tablet. "Yeah, Grandma." My granddaughter gave me a quick smile but then turned back to whisper to her cousin. I turned to my son. "May I sit with you?" He shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we were just discussing plans for the day. It might get hectic." I laughed nervously. "That's all right. I'd love to hear the plans." My daughter-in-law's eyes narrowed. "We're going shopping. You'll be bored. Why don't you stay back and rest?" "I like walking," I replied gently. "I'd enjoy the fresh air." She sighed, then plastered on a fake smile. "Of course, if you really want to. Just try to keep up, all right?" Something in her tone cut through me. As if I were a child being tolerated, not a mother who had once held this family together. We spent the morning wandering through stores. Or rather, they wandered and I trailed behind. "Should we get the red dress or the blue one?" her sister asked, holding up 2 hangers. "Get both," my daughter-in-law laughed. "We'll just charge it to the room." I opened my mouth to say something but closed it again. They didn't know every charge went directly to my card. Every bag they carried was a bag I had paid for. At lunch they chose a fancy cafe. The waiter placed menus in front of us. I began to read but my son snatched the menu from my hands. "Mom, you won't like this food. Too many spices. Just order soup." I looked at him, stunned. But I wanted to try. "Soup, Mom," he repeated firmly. "Trust me." I swallowed my pride. "All right. Soup." While they ordered pastas, seafood, and desserts, I quietly sipped broth, feeling smaller with every spoonful. The children laughed at jokes I wasn't part of. The women clinked their glasses. My son spoke of investments, vacations, new cars. Not once did anyone turn to me and ask, "Are you enjoying yourself, Mom?" When the bill came, my daughter-in-law waved dismissively. "Just put it on the room. We'll settle later." The waiter nodded. I pressed my lips together, biting back the truth. That evening we returned to the hotel. My son flopped on the sofa, scrolling his phone. His wife fussed with her shopping bags. I tried to tell them about a local art gallery I had read about, but no one listened. Finally I said, "Maybe tomorrow we can all take a walk by the shore. Together. Like old times." My son didn't look up. "We'll see." His wife smirked. "Don't get your hopes up, Mom. We have a full schedule." I felt my chest tighten. "I just wanted us to spend some time." "Mom," my son interrupted, "please don't make this difficult." The words stung more than a slap. That night as I lay in bed, I replayed everything in my mind. The way they ignored me at breakfast. The way they laughed without me at lunch. The way my son, my own son, spoke to me like I was a burden. Tears slipped down my cheeks but I didn't make a sound. I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "They think I'm invisible. They think I'm nothing." Then my hand brushed against the envelope on the nightstand, the receipts. The reminder. No, I thought, wiping my tears. I'm not nothing. They just don't know the truth yet. And deep inside, a small flame of anger began to burn. The 3rd day of our trip should have been the happiest one. The sun was shining, the ocean glittered like diamonds, and families gathered near the pool with music and laughter. But for me it became the day I finally heard the truth. I was in the hotel hallway, standing outside my son's suite, waiting to knock. I had planned to invite them for a quiet breakfast together. Just me, my son, and the grandchildren. Something simple. Something I thought they might enjoy. But before I could knock, I heard voices. "Honestly, I don't know why we brought her," my daughter-in-law said. Her tone was sharp, irritated. "Keep your voice down," my son whispered. "She ruins the mood," she hissed. "We could have had this trip to ourselves. Instead, we're stuck babysitting an old woman who can't even walk fast." My chest tightened. I pressed a hand to the doorframe to steady myself. Then my son sighed. "You're right. He slows us down. And she keeps trying to tag along like she doesn't understand boundaries." I gasped silently, my heart shattering. His wife laughed bitterly. "Boundaries? She doesn't even pay for herself. We're the ones covering everything while she enjoys the ride." My son didn't correct her. He didn't defend me. He didn't tell her the truth, that every meal, every room, every shopping bag had been bought with my money. said he chuckled. Let's just keep her out of the way. Dinner tonight we go without her again. She'll survive. Tears filled my eyes. I turned, backing away from the door, my footsteps silent on the carpet. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. In the elevator I clutched my purse tightly, whispering, "They think I'm a burden. They think I'm useless. They don't even know." At breakfast I sat alone again, staring at the steam rising from my tea. Other families passed by, their voices cheerful, their arms linked together. Me. I was just a ghost at my own table. The children didn't even join me. They had left with their parents, too busy with activities that didn't suit me. Later that afternoon I walked down to the beach. The waves crashed softly, children built sandcastles and couples strolled hand in hand. I sat on a bench, watching the horizon. My mind kept replaying their words. Old woman, slows us down, doesn't even pay for herself. I thought of all the years I had worked quietly, saving penny by penny. I thought of how I had planned this trip for months, imagining the joy on their faces when they saw the ocean, the hotel, the meals. I had dreamed it would bring us closer. Instead, it had shown me how far apart we really were. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I saw them heading out of the lobby, dressed up, laughing. My daughter-in-law wore her new red dress, the one I had paid for. My son carried a reservation slip for the rooftop restaurant. I stood near the fountain, half hidden behind a pillar. My granddaughter spotted me and waved. "Grandma, aren't you coming?" Before I could answer, her mother snapped, "Hurry up, we'll be late. Grandma needs her rest." The child hesitated, then turned back to follow. My son didn't even glance in my direction. I whispered to myself, "Rest. That's all they want from me. To stay quiet. To stay invisible." I walked slowly back to my room. But inside I didn't feel weak anymore. I didn't feel invisible. I felt something else rising, a strength I had forgotten I still possessed. I sat at the desk, pulled out the receipts and spread them across the surface like playing cards. Room bookings, spa reservations, dinner packages. Every last detail carried my name. "They think they're the ones in control," I murmured, my fingers brushing the papers. "But this is my move." I folded the receipts neatly and slipped them back into my purse. That night, while they dined under the stars, laughing over wine I had paid for, I made a silent promise to myself. The next time they tried to push me aside, I would not stay silent. They thought they had ditched me at the hotel. They thought I was powerless. But soon, very soon, they would learn the truth. The next morning I thought maybe things would be better. Maybe last night was just a bad dream. Maybe my son would finally knock on my door and say, "Mom, come with us today. We want you there." But no knock came. I went downstairs for breakfast alone as usual. The hostess smiled politely as she led me to a corner table. While I sipped my tea, I spotted my family at the far end of the hall. They were seated together, plates piled high, laughter spilling across the room. I waved timidly, trying to catch my granddaughter's eye. She smiled back and lifted her hand, but her mother tugged it down quickly. "Don't distract Grandma," I heard her whisper. "She's fine on her own. Fine on my own." That phrase echoed like a curse. After breakfast, I decided to walk along the poolside. I thought maybe if I bumped into them casually I could spend a little time with the children. But when I reached the pool, my daughter-in-law spotted me first. "Oh, Mom," she said, her smile tight, her eyes cold. "We're about to head out for a boat tour. It's very active, lots of climbing. Not suitable for you. Why don't you rest by the pool instead?" I opened my mouth to argue, but my son cut in. "Yeah, Mom, it's better this way. We don't want you to get hurt." I stared at him. "I'm not that fragile," I said softly. He looked away, avoiding my eyes. "It's for the best." They hurried off, the children trailing behind, their little hands full of beach towels and sunscreen. My granddaughter turned once, her lips trembling like she wanted to protest, but her mother pulled her along. I sat on a lounge chair, watching families splash in the pool, watching couples sip cocktails, watching strangers laugh together. Everyone looked happy except me. Hours later, they returned sunburned and smiling, their voices loud with excitement. "That was the best boat ride ever," my grandson shouted. "Yeah, Grandma," my granddaughter said shyly. "The dolphins were so close you could almost touch them." My heart sank. I had missed it. All of it. That evening, I decided I couldn't sit silently anymore. When they gathered in the suite, I stepped inside, clutching the receipts in my purse for courage. Maybe tomorrow we can all go somewhere together, I suggested gently. Just one day as a family. We could visit the market or walk by the shore. My daughter-in-law groaned loudly. Mom, please. You keep pushing this. We already have plans. I blinked. But I just wanted to spend time. Enough, my son snapped. His voice was sharp, final. Stop making this trip harder than it already is. You're embarrassing yourself. The room went quiet. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear. I'm embarrassing myself? I whispered. Yes, he said coldly. You don't fit in with what we're doing. Can't you see that? My daughter-in-law smirked, her arms crossed. It's better if you just stay in the hotel, Mom. Relax. Read a book. Do something quiet. That way everyone's happy. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. My grandchildren looked at me, their faces torn, but they said nothing. I nodded slowly. I see. You don't want me with you. No one corrected me. No one spoke. I walked out of that room with my head held high, even though inside I was breaking apart. Back in my suite, I opened my purse and spread the receipts across the bed. My hands shook, but not from sadness anymore, from something sharper. They thought I was weak. They thought I was invisible. They thought I didn't matter. But every single luxury they enjoyed, the rooms, the meals, the boat rides, belonged to me. I whispered into the empty room, you left me behind, but soon, I'll be the one leaving you behind. And for the first time since the trip began, I felt a flicker of power return to my veins. By the 5th day I had learned to expect the silence. No invitation to breakfast, no smile, no gentle knock on my door. Still I hoped, foolishly, that maybe today would be different. I sat in the lobby, dressed neatly, waiting with my purse on my lap. The fountain splashed softly behind me and the chandeliers sparkled above. I kept glancing toward the elevator, my heart lifting each time the doors opened. Finally I saw them, my son, his wife, her sister, and the children. They were dressed beautifully, laughter spilling from their lips. Good morning, I called out, rising to my feet. My son froze for a moment, then gave me a tight smile. Morning, Mom. Where are we going today? I asked, trying to sound cheerful. His wife stepped forward. Actually, Mom, we're headed to the rooftop restaurant. Very elegant. Very private. I frowned. Oh, should I change clothes? I can be ready in 5 minutes. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It's already booked for 4. No extra seats. I blinked. 4? But there are 6 of us. She glanced at her sister. She's watching the kids later. Tonight's just for us adults. My chest tightened. So, I'm not included. Mom, my son said firmly, don't make this a scene. You'll be more comfortable here. Order room service. Watch TV. Relax. The words stabbed deep. Room service. Watch TV. As if that was all I was good for now. An old woman to be tucked away, forgotten. I forced a smile, though my throat burned. Of course. You go enjoy yourselves. The children looked at me with guilty eyes. My granddaughter whispered, Grandma, can't you come too? But her mother tugged her hand. Hush. Let's go. And then just like that they were gone. I stood frozen in the lobby, staring at the glass doors as they swung shut behind them. The laughter faded into the distance, leaving only silence in its wake. I sank onto the sofa, my hands trembling. For a long time I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't believe this was my life. I whispered to myself, they ditched me. They really ditched me. Hot tears blurred my vision. I thought of all the sacrifices I had made, late nights at work, skipping meals to save money, denying myself luxuries so my son could have them. And this was my reward. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling the ache spread through me. I gave them everything, I whispered. And they gave me nothing. But then, my eyes drifted to my purse. To the envelope inside. I pulled it out slowly, my fingers brushing the crisp papers. Receipts. Proof. The truth no one could erase. I spread them across the coffee table in front of me. Room bookings. Dinner reservations. Excursions. Spa treatments. Every signature, every charge, every single cent. Mine. And suddenly my tears stopped. A calmness washed over me, sharp and steady. For the first time in days I sat up straight, my shoulders firm. They don't know, I whispered, my lips curling into the faintest smile. They don't know this entire trip belongs to me. I gathered the papers, folded them neatly and slipped them back into my purse. Then I picked up the hotel phone. "Front desk," I said, my voice steady. "This is Mrs. Johnson, Suite 604. I need to make some changes to the reservations. Effective immediately." The clerk's polite voice replied, "Of course, ma'am. What would you like to adjust?" I glanced toward the door, imagining my son and his wife clinking glasses over the dinner I had provided. And then I whispered, "Cancel tomorrow's bookings. All of them." There was a pause. "All of them, ma'am?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Every single one." As I hung up the phone, a strange peace settled over me. For the first time I wasn't invisible. I wasn't powerless. They had left me behind. But soon, they would understand exactly who held the strings. And when they did, I would be waiting. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the muffled sounds of the city outside, my heart pounding with both pain and purpose. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, laughing, clinking glasses, enjoying a life built on my sacrifices. By sunrise, my mind was clear. I brewed a small cup of coffee, sipped it slowly, and looked at the stack of receipts one last time. Then I slid them into my purse, tucked my suitcase neatly, and stood tall before the mirror. "No more tears," I whispered to my reflection. "It's time." Downstairs, the lobby was quiet. The clerk at the desk looked up with a smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. Did you rest well?" I returned the smile calmly. "Yes, thank you. I'd like to check out." His eyes widened. "Check out? But your reservation?" "All in my name," I interrupted gently, sliding the receipts across the counter. "And I've already called to cancel the extras. Please process it now." He looked at the papers, then back at me. "Of course, ma'am." I watched as he typed quickly, confusion flickering across his face. "Everything is prepaid. Shall I inform the other guests in your party?" I shook my head. "No. Let them find out themselves." He hesitated, then nodded. "As you wish." Minutes later, I walked out of the Grand Hotel lobby with my suitcase rolling behind me. The morning sun bathed the city streets in gold. For the first time since arriving, I felt free. I hailed a taxi and handed the driver an address I had scribbled down days earlier. A small, cozy inn I had discovered while wandering alone. When we arrived, the innkeeper greeted me warmly. "Welcome. Are you here for the festival?" I smiled. "No, just looking for some peace." The inn was nothing like the glittering hotel. No chandeliers, no marble floors, no rooftop bars. Just wooden beams, flower boxes in the windows, and the smell of fresh bread wafting from the kitchen. It was perfect. I placed my suitcase by the bed and sat down, breathing deeply. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was comforting. That evening, I dined alone at a small cafe near the inn. The waiter greeted me kindly, offering recommendations. I ordered pasta, wine, and dessert, things my son had said I wouldn't like. And every bite tasted like freedom. As I ate, I watched families pass by, couples holding hands, children chasing balloons. No one knew who I was. No one dismissed me. No one told me to rest. I was just a woman enjoying her evening, and that was enough. Back at the inn, I opened my journal and wrote a single sentence. They left me behind, but I moved forward. The next morning, I decided to explore on my own. I visited the local market, admiring colorful scarves and handmade jewelry. I spoke with vendors, laughed with strangers, and even bought myself a small silver pendant shaped like a wave. "Something just for me," I whispered, fastening it around my neck. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, my family was about to discover the truth. I imagined them returning from their day of shopping, striding confidently into the lobby, only to be met with confusion at the desk. "Your reservation has been cancelled, sir," the clerk would explain politely. "The suite is no longer available." "What do you mean cancelled?" my son would demand, his voice rising. "Ma'am checked out this morning," the clerk would reply calmly. My daughter-in-law's face would turn red, her voice sharp. "She did what?" And the realization would dawn. The hotel, the meals, the luxuries, it had all been under my name. Without me, they had nothing. That image played in my mind all day, bringing a quiet satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. That night, I sat by the window of my little inn, the silver pendant cool against my skin, and whispered, "They thought they ditched me. But in the end, I left them behind." And for the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. The morning sun spilled through the lace curtains, warming my face as I stirred awake. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to raised voices, dismissive sighs, or the sound of doors slamming in anger. Instead, I woke to the gentle hum of birds outside the inn's garden and the faint smell of fresh bread drifting up from the kitchen. I lay still for a moment, letting it all sink in. This silence didn't feel empty. It felt alive. I whispered into the quiet, "This is what freedom sounds like." After breakfast, the innkeeper suggested I visit the nearby coastal path. "It's a beautiful walk, ma'am. The sea air will do you good." I thanked her, packed a small bag with water and my journal and set out. The path wound through narrow streets lined with colorful houses before opening to the cliffs. Below, waves crashed rhythmically against the rocks, the sea stretching endlessly into the horizon. The wind tugged at my scarf, whipping my hair across my face, but I didn't mind. I felt weightless, as if the years of carrying other people's burdens had finally lifted. Every step I took away from that hotel felt like stepping out of a cage. As I walked, memories surfaced. My son rolling his eyes at my questions, my daughter-in-law mocking my clothes, the coldness in their voices when they spoke to me. Each memory stung, but the sting no longer paralyzed me. They had left me behind. They had stripped me of dignity. But they had not broken me. I stopped at a lookout point where the cliffs jutted into the sea. Sitting on a stone bench, I opened my journal and began to write. Rescue doesn't always come from someone else. Sometimes you rescue yourself. And when you do, you discover you were stronger all along. A tear slid down my cheek, not of sorrow but of release. After some time, I noticed a woman about my age standing nearby, sketching the waves. She caught my eye and smiled. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "Yes," I replied softly. "It feels healing." We struck up a conversation. Her name was Margaret, a retired teacher traveling solo after her husband's passing. "Everyone thought I'd be too fragile to travel," she laughed. "But I thought, why not? Life is short." Her words echoed in my heart. For the first time, I felt I wasn't alone. There were others like me, women who had been underestimated, dismissed, or told they were too weak. And yet here we were. Strong. We walked together for a while, sharing stories. When I told her about being abandoned at the hotel, she frowned. "They don't deserve you," she said firmly. "But maybe this is life's way of showing you, you deserve yourself." That night, back at the inn, I sat by the fire in the common room, sipping tea. Other travelers shared tales of their journeys, their laughter filling the air. I didn't sit quietly in the corner this time. I joined in. I told them about the cafe, the market, the silver pendant I had bought. One of them said, "You have such a spark when you talk about these things." I smiled shyly. It had been so long since anyone noticed me, since I noticed me. Later, as I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The lines on my face were still there, but they looked softer, as if years of tension had eased. I touched the pendant at my neck and whispered, "I rescued myself." That night, I dreamt of standing at the edge of the sea, waves rushing toward me but never pulling me under. Instead, I floated, light, unburdened, free. And when I woke, I knew one thing with certainty. My story wasn't ending with betrayal. It was beginning with freedom. The following days passed like a gentle breeze, each one carrying me a little further away from the shadows of the past. I no longer felt like a forgotten guest at someone else's table. I was building a table of my own. Each morning I woke with purpose. I would lace up my walking shoes, tie back my hair, and head out to explore. Sometimes it was the cliffside path, sometimes the bustling town square where locals sold handmade crafts. Every corner of that little town whispered possibility. One afternoon I wandered into a bookstore tucked between two cafes. The air smelled of old pages and coffee grounds. I ran my fingers along the spines, pausing at a shelf labeled Travel and New Beginnings. A book caught my eye, It's Never Too Late. I opened it, skimming lines about people who had started new lives after 50, 60, even 70. My lips curled into a smile. "So I'm not alone," I whispered. The shopkeeper, a kind elderly man with spectacles, noticed me. "That one's a favorite," he said. "Changed my wife's life when she retired." I bought it without hesitation. That evening I sat in my room by the window reading chapter after chapter. Every story filled me with courage. If others could rebuild, so could I. The next morning I opened my journal and wrote a plan. Not for them, for me. Travel somewhere new at least once a year. Join a local group or class to meet people. Save money for experiences, not just necessities. Write down my story not for revenge but for release. I underlined the last point twice. As the ink dried, I realized something. I had spent years being silent, shrinking, hiding. But my voice still lived inside me. And maybe, just maybe, others needed to hear it. Later that week, Margaret, the woman I had met on the cliff walk, invited me to join her for a pottery class in town. It's fun, she said. And messy. I laughed. I haven't touched clay since school. But I went. And as I shaped the damp clay with trembling hands, something unexpected happened. I laughed, loud, unguarded, from deep in my chest. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from myself in decades. Margaret grinned. See? You're not just surviving. You're living. That night, I looked at the crooked little bowl I had made. To anyone else it was imperfect. To me it was proof. Proof that my hands, once weighed down by regret, could still create something new. The innkeeper noticed my glow when I returned. You look 10 years younger, she said warmly. Maybe I feel it, I replied. But I knew the truth. I wasn't younger. I was lighter. One evening, as I sat in the garden sipping tea and watching the sun set behind the hills, I pulled out my phone. Dozens of missed calls and unread messages blinked from the screen. My son, my daughter-in-law, even distant relatives. For a moment I hesitated. Should I answer? Should I hear their excuses? Then I locked the phone and set it aside. No, I whispered. Not yet. This part of the journey is mine. Instead, I opened my journal and began writing my story from the beginning. Not the story of a woman abandoned, but of a woman reborn. And as the ink flowed, so did my resolve. I wasn't just escaping the past anymore. I was rebuilding my future, brick by brick, choice by choice, word by word. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to see what came next. I was sipping tea in the garden of the inn when my phone buzzed again. Another call. Another message. For days I had ignored them. But now the screen filled with words that caught my breath. Where are you? We're stranded. Come back, we need you. I set the phone down on the table, staring at the message. A part of me wanted to laugh, another part to cry. Now they needed me? After all the mocking, the abandonment, the betrayal? My hands trembled slightly, but not with fear. This time with power. I scrolled through the missed calls. My son, my daughter-in-law, even my son's friend who had joined them. Dozens of frantic attempts. Their polished world had cracked the moment I walked away. The irony was sharp. They had treated me as invisible, and now I was the only one visible enough to save them. The phone buzzed again. This time a voicemail. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. My son's voice spilled through, tight with anger. Mom, what did you do? The hotel says the rooms were under your name. We've been thrown out. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Call me back immediately. I closed my eyes, listening to the entitled tone. Even now, no apology. No remorse. Only demand. Then another message came through. This time my daughter-in-law. Her voice was sharper, tinged with panic. Why would you do this to us? We're family. We can't even check in anywhere else without a credit card. Stop acting selfish. Fix this. I nearly dropped the phone from the shock of her words. Selfish. The word echoed, stabbing at me. For years I had sacrificed, bent, and swallowed my pride for them. And still, in their eyes, I was the selfish one. The tea had gone cold. I placed the cup down carefully, then picked up my journal. My hand moved fast across the page, almost furiously. They broke me for years. And now for the first time they feel what I felt. Unwanted, stranded, small. This is not cruelty. This is balance. That evening I sat by the fireplace in the inn's common room. Margaret noticed my heavy look. What happened? She asked gently. I told her about the messages. Her eyes narrowed. And, what will you do? I exhaled slowly. For once I'll do nothing. She smiled knowingly. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. The next day the messages changed. My son's voice cracked in a new voicemail. Mom, please, we didn't mean it like that. We need you. Please call back. My chest tightened. For a fleeting second I felt the old pull, the instinct to rush back, to rescue, to forgive. But then I remembered the night in that hotel, alone in that cold room, realizing they had left me behind like luggage. I whispered to myself, no more. I crafted a single reply, my fingers steady as I typed. I am safe. Do not contact me again until you learn the meaning of respect. Mom. I hit send and set the phone down. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was mine. Later, I walked to the cliffs again, letting the ocean winds whip against my face. The horizon stretched out, endless and strong. For the first time, I didn't feel small beneath it. I felt equal to it. Vast. Unstoppable. That night, I slept deeply without a single nightmare. The breaking point had come, not for me but for them. And instead of bending, I had stood tall. They had finally learned what life without me felt like. And I had finally learned what life with myself could be. The days that followed were like stepping into a new season of my life. For years I had lived in winter, cold, gray, stripped bare by the weight of others. But here in this little town by the sea, spring had come. I woke up earlier than usual, not from restlessness but from eagerness. The sound of the waves crashing against the cliffs became my alarm clock. The scent of baking bread my daily invitation to rise. At breakfast, the innkeeper smiled as she poured my coffee. You seem lighter, she said. I think I am, I replied. And I meant it. I no longer carried the heaviness of waiting for approval, or the sting of being dismissed. My shoulders felt unburdened. Even my laughter had returned, quiet at first but growing louder each day. That afternoon, Margaret and I joined a group tour to the local vineyard. We walked through rows of vines, the sun warming our backs, the guide telling stories of families who had built their lives from the soil. When we reached the tasting room, I held the glass of deep red wine to the light, watching it shimmer. Try it, Margaret nudged. I took a sip, the flavor bold and unfamiliar. I smiled. I like it. You're full of surprises, she teased. I chuckled. Maybe I'm just discovering them myself. Later, as the group laughed and clinked glasses, I realized something. I was no longer the outsider in the corner. I was part of the moment. Present. That night, I sat at my desk with my journal open. The words flowed more easily now. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering without pain. Healing is choosing joy even after sorrow. Healing is freedom. I closed the journal and let the words rest in my heart. The next morning, I treated myself to something I hadn't done in decades. I bought a dress. Not a practical one, not chosen to please anyone else. Just one that made me feel alive. Bright blue, flowing, the color of the ocean. When I wore it to dinner that evening, the innkeeper gasped. You look radiant. I blushed, and used to such attention, but inside I felt like the woman I was always meant to be. As the days passed, I explored more of the town. I attended a music recital at the local church, where the notes of a violin stirred something tender in me. I spent lazy afternoons in cafes, reading and people watching, writing down stories that drifted through my imagination. And slowly the idea took root. Maybe my story wasn't just for me. Maybe it was for others, too, for women who had been silenced, forgotten, or underestimated. One evening, I sat with Margaret under the stars, telling her this thought. You should write it, she said. The world needs to hear stories like yours. I hesitated. Do you think anyone would care? She smiled gently. You cared about the stories in that book you bought, didn't you? Imagine if the authors had stayed silent. Her words lit a spark. For years, my voice had been stolen by criticism and control. Now I had the chance to reclaim it, not with shouting but with truth. That night I wrote until my hand ached. Pages and pages, not of revenge but of resilience. Not of bitterness but of rebirth. When I finally closed the journal, I whispered to myself, this is my recovery. My words. My life. The messages from my family still came occasionally, pleas, excuses, even anger, but I no longer shook when I saw their names. I simply pressed delete. Because I no longer needed their validation. I had found something stronger, self-respect, peace, and a future that belonged to me. And with every passing day I was recovering, not into who I had been before them but into someone entirely new. Someone freer. It happened on an ordinary afternoon when I was sipping tea at a cafe overlooking the square. The chatter of locals and the laughter of children filled the air when suddenly, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Curious, I opened it and there they were. My son and daughter-in-law. Their faces flashed across a headline. Tourists evicted after hotel scandal, credit fraud suspicions. I blinked, reading further. Apparently, after I had checked out and canceled the bookings, they had tried to bluff their way into other hotels, using excuses and half-truths. When questioned about payment, their arrogance drew suspicion. One manager, irritated by their entitlement, called the authorities. No arrests were made, but they were escorted out in disgrace. The article painted them as freeloaders who had tried to take advantage of the system. Their vacation ended in public humiliation. I set the phone down, staring at the square before me. My tea had gone cold, but inside I felt warm. Not with malice, not with vengeance, but with a quiet sense of balance. Karma had done what I never could. As I sat there, memories of that night in the hotel returned. Me alone in that cold room, abandoned, unwanted. I remembered how small I had felt. And now there they were, exposed for the smallness of their own choices. I didn't need to lift a finger. The universe had drawn its own line. Later that evening, Margaret noticed my expression as we walked by the harbor. "Something's on your mind," she said. I told her about the news article. She listened quietly, then nodded. "That's justice," she said. "Not the bitter kind. The honest kind." I looked out at the boats bobbing gently on the waves. "I thought I would feel triumphant," I admitted. "But I don't. I just feel free." And it was true. For years I had imagined moments where they would apologize, regret, come crawling back. But now, watching them fall on their own, I realized I didn't even need their remorse. Their actions had written their punishment. In the days that followed, the messages from them shifted again. Gone was the arrogance. Gone was the entitlement. Instead, short, broken lines appeared. "Please, Mom, we're sorry. We didn't know it would go this far. Can we just talk?" I read them, then set the phone aside. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't ache. I felt only a calm certainty. The power they once held over me was gone. One afternoon, while journaling at the inn, I wrote, "Karma is not about revenge. It's about reflection." They see themselves now, not through my eyes but through the world's. And I see myself clearly too. Strong, whole, free. That night I attended a festival in town. Lanterns lit up the streets, music filled the air, and children danced with sparklers. Margaret and I joined a group of women singing folk songs, our voices rising into the night sky. As I sang, I felt something lift entirely from my spirit. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I wasn't even just rebuilding. I was shining. When I returned to my room later, I sat by the window looking out at the sea. The moon cast a silver path across the waves, endless and bright. I whispered into the night, "I don't need their downfall to rise. I was always meant to rise." And for the first time, I knew my story wasn't about their betrayal. It was about my freedom. I never thought I'd tell this story. For years, I carried my shame in silence, hiding behind forced smiles and polite nods. I thought no one would care. I thought no one would understand. But today, as I sit here in this little inn by the sea, watching the waves crash against the shore, I realize something important. Silence only serves those who hurt us. Speaking is how we heal. So here I am telling you everything. Yes, my family abandoned me. Yes, they mocked me, dismissed me, left me alone in a hotel room as if I were disposable. For years I believed them. I believed I was too weak, too old, too unworthy to stand up. But the truth is this. The moment I chose myself, I began to live again. I checked out of that hotel, walked away from their control, and found freedom in the simplest places. In a stranger's kindness, in a silver pendant at a market, in the sound of the ocean reminding me I am still vast, still alive. And when karma caught up to them, I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to seek revenge. Because my healing wasn't in their downfall. It was in my rise. If you are listening right now and you've ever been made to feel small, invisible, or unwanted, please hear me. You are not powerless. You may feel trapped, silenced, or forgotten. I know that feeling well. But rescue doesn't always come from someone else. Sometimes, it comes the moment you decide to rescue yourself. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. I cried for nights. I doubted myself. I nearly answered their calls. But each time I chose silence instead of surrender, each time I chose myself instead of their demands, I grew stronger. And if I can do it, at my age, after years of being diminished, so can you. Don't wait for someone else to hand you respect. Claim it. Don't wait for someone else to validate your worth. Know it. And don't wait for an apology that may never come. Feel anyway. Because the greatest revenge isn't making them pay. living a life so free, so joyful that their absence doesn't even sting anymore. Now I want to turn to you. Have you ever faced betrayal like this? Have you ever been abandoned, dismissed, or underestimated by the very people who should have loved you? If you have, please share your story in the comments. Not just for me, but for the other women who are watching who need to know they're not alone. And if you feel too shy to write publicly, I invite you to join our private support group. It's a safe space for women like us, women who have lived through pain but are ready to rebuild, recover, and rise. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. And finally, if my story spoke to you, if it gave you even a spark of courage, please subscribe. Because I will keep telling these stories. Not just mine but ours. Stories of betrayal, of survival, of healing, of justice. Stories that prove it's never too late to reclaim your voice. So subscribe, share, and let's grow this circle of women who refuse to be silenced any longer. I'll leave you with the words I wrote in my journal on the night everything changed. They left me behind. But I moved forward. And I will never look back. Neither should you.